alt.net or something like that. It's the Tonight Show with Dave, James, and Richard, and other shenanigans. I hope not, by the way, because it's kind of a disappointment from the usual stand-up comedy. Though sometimes it's a bit like that.
Well, they're the fun ones.
Unintentional. Well, welcome everyone. For those who have decided to join us and are coming onto the stream, hopefully there's a few of you coming around as we speak. Should I actually have tweeted that we're live? What are you drinking, James?
Probably.
A Woolworth substitution, actually, but it's quite good. Lost Gold, alcohol-free severe. But
did you hurt yourself?
You've got a big beer because it's 500 mils.
Yeah, also alcohol-free.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate ads for alcohol-free products here. And Richard's one's definitely alcohol-free too.
We're allowed to advertise them. It's no alcohol. It's fine.
Not time for beer. It's always time for beer. 10 a.m.
Well, that's the beauty of alcohol-free. 10 a.m. It's fine.
Beer. Who needs caffeine when you've got alcohol-free beer?
Who needs water?
Glad. Do you understand anything though? We've got a hand crap on the audience. So again, welcome everyone who's now rolling in and giving us a hard time already. That's how we like to start. This is alt.net for the month of February, and today is Tuesday, if you're not aware. It's the 222 of 22. Feel free to write that down, take a photo of it. It's like when your speedo ticks over 100,000 kilometers in your car and you're trying to take a photo. You kind of want to pull over to the side of the road and go, yes, nailed it. Or you plan to do that in your head and then it's gone past and you're like, damn it, 100,001, you idiot.
You realize
you have to buy a new car. So welcome again to alt.net. We figured today we'd do something a little different, which is make things up as we go along. Not entirely untrue. Yeah. No, but 22. Hang on, Scott. 22, and thanks for the number of decimal places on the milliseconds there. Good luck trying to capture that one on the phone. I have completely lost the plot now. What are we talking about? Oh, that's right, .NET 7. And
welcome, Richard. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. James, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Richard.
I wanted to do that because you're about to take a drink.
Yeah. Personal welcomes always appreciated.
And Dave, welcome to the show as well.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, introductions, Dave, just so everyone knows where you fit into the picture.
Sure. I'm Dave. I'm in Melbourne, not Sydney, but don't hold that against me. That just means my feet are dry at the moment. I work on Roslyn on the IDE team, which means all of the analyzers and fixes and the stuff in Visual Studio you see. So not the compiler, even though that's totally what I'm going to talk about, and just assume that I know what I'm talking about instead of. I have tweaked the compiler a couple of times, and boy, is it nerve-wracking writing code knowing that, wait, every DLL got slightly bigger in .NET 6 because of me. That's just scary. Anyway, I do say slightly. It's very small. But yeah, that's me. Hello.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. One of the reasons we got you on this month, apart from being very prepared because February rolled around much faster than we thought, there was a pull request that came out during the month for the .NET runtime, and I saw it come through the tweet stream, and I looked at it and went, oh my, that is a freaking massive pull request, which is what we like to see from professional software developers, pull requests that are like 12,000 lines of change, and at the end there's one comment that says LGTM, and then off we go. But that pull request in particular was really notable because of the amount of deletion that occurred in there. And for those who aren't aware, this is the double exclamation runtime null check on that you can now put on attributes. And it's one of those things that in C#10 I was hoping would arrive, because I hate writing guard clauses and all that sort of thing. But it was pretty interesting from a I saw Gareth's comment, then I'm going to get distracted by the chat. Go stream, distract me. It's all good. But yeah, the community feedback that happened after it was all implemented. I thought it'd be cool if we could just talk about that, and you can give your perspective on it.
Yep, sounds good. If you want to, I don't know whether you want to throw my screen up, but I've got the PR here. I mean, it's not, you know.
Oh, hang on.
That's me. It's the other guy.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll fix it. It's all good.
There's too much.
So yeah, I thought we'll go through all 21,000 lines that have been deleted and just.
Please, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Where's that
so
here again?
yeah, this was interesting from a couple of points of view. Firstly, and there was a lot of chatter internally in our team and like with the compiler team, because we all work on the same repo. The interesting thing with this one for us, I think, or for some of us on the team, is so this got really big on social media, as you said, but it got big when the runtime implemented it, and obviously it's a huge PR, so that's notable, right? If they'd done it in a series of tiny PRs, maybe they wouldn't have noticed. What's funny is, like you said, you were hoping for this in C#10. This almost made it for C#10, but got cut at the last second. And so it's probably been in discussion and in meetings and minutes and all those things for people to pay attention for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, maybe. Now, as someone who doesn't pay attention at all, I don't bear any ill will to anyone who doesn't. But it was kind of interesting that the first sort of, like, there were some people saying, you know, why did they roll this out in the runtime? Where was the press release for this feature or whatever? Which, I mean, apart from not being the way that C# language is done, I'm not sure I can remember sort of such an early adoption of a feature where, you know, C#11 is not finalized, right? Like, we don't actually know what's going to be in it. Obviously, it's safe to assume that the ones that have actually been coded and checked in probably going to make it. Although I wouldn't rule it out that they're not. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And then just, I mean, so much of the feedback was just about the actual syntax, which is like, normally arguing about syntax is sort of, you know, bike shedding, right? It's arguing about something relatively minor, but this was there was lots of different opinions. So this PR came out that got noise on Twitter and made Hacker News or whatever. It sparked this issue on the C# lang discussions, which is basically, how is this supposed to be used? And if you want to read, like, this is a really long discussion. And it's pretty much everyone in the community raising their opinion, which is great. It's interesting that it happens, of course, after the feature was coded and decided on. But I mean, you know, again, I don't pay attention either.
Experience, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. But again, I don't pay attention either. So I was not aware of what other options might have been discussed for this feature before it came out either. But it is interesting to read some of these and to see the team, you know, let me just see if I can find Jared's post again, because I think he does go through them. So this one, yeah. So he was on the .NET community stand-up, and he said a little bit about it because it got so much noise, and answers all the common questions. You know, why isn't it this? But going through some of the syntax options, why isn't there a global option for this? All those things. It is interesting to read all of this. Just like, from my point of view, there was lots of noise about it, and there was lots of anger about it, maybe. But all of the feedback, people were like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Well, it turned out that all of those ideas had been discussed, which I think is like, it's really good. It's a really good sign of how, I guess, comprehensive the language meetings actually are, right? So it's like maybe, hopefully, some faith restored. I don't know. We'll see. But definitely the most visceral reaction I can remember, although talking to some other people in the compiler team, they say it's not the worst they've seen. So that's interesting.
Question is what? No, actually, we won't go to what is the worst.
Well, I don't know. They didn't say. The language design team are pretty nice. They tend to so there's a level of anonymity to it. So like the people who are on the language design team are well known, but all of the minutes of all the meetings, all the decisions, there's never any names. So no one can be targeted for you didn't like my feature or whatever. And so I'm sure, they also wouldn't probably reveal what was the most vehement reaction. But it was interesting. And I mean, like you can see how much code it saves. It's 15,000 lines of code. Oh, yeah, 17, about 17.
Something ridiculous.
It's pretty cool. I mean, I thought I'd just run through quickly what it is in case people don't know and sort of why it's good. Yep. All right, so let's do, I guess, the old way. So if we have a string parameter, the old way would simply be, if s is null, we want to throw null exception. Sheet is going to write my code for me, which is great. That's the old way. It's not very exciting, and we can use our string, and great. So the one problem with this, as far as I guess why this feature exists, is the JIT will not inline a method that has a throw expression in it. Simple as that. As far as I know, that's a hard and fast rule. If there's a throw, it just will not be inlined. So there's some super high performance scenarios where this has problems. And so what we got in .NET 6, which we'll call .NET 6, is a slight variation on this, where we can go argument null exception, which
which has those. You're missing an E.
Thank you. Argument.
Oh, no, not that yet. No.
Sorry. There we go. Dot throw if null. Yes.
Okay.
And then I can leave out the name of, because that'll be added by another C#. That's a C# 10 feature. So this is the .NET 6 version, right? And so this is now saved, I guess, 3 lines of code, which is great. Because this is in another method call, the JIT will now happily inline this method. So this solves the perf issue, and it removes some of the code. But then, of course, the next logical step is C# 11, which is 2 exclamation marks. And that's it. So basically, these two are the same. There is a slight difference, which I can show if I call them. So if we call our .NET 6 one, obviously it's going to throw an exception. Oh no, that's right.
Look at you and your minimal C# code business.
I just did file new project. Where's my terminal? There it is. Okay, found the terminal. So this is, coming from the argument null exception .throw method from throw if null. So obviously, it affects your stack traces. That's no big deal. If we look at C# 11, interestingly, they don't use argument null exception .throw if null. They actually write their own. Private implementation details is a class that is serialized out. Actually, I can. Oops, wrong browser window. Too many windows. Let me bring up Sharplab. I gotta remember how this works. And switch to a good branch. Oops, and where do I run it? Okay, so we put the exclamation marks on S. Obviously, they're not here in the decompile code, but it's calling throw if null, and the compiler actually outputs this class to help. I have no idea why. I guess it's probably just easier than checking if that's available, because of course this can compile. This would allow this to compile against .NET 6, .NET 5, whatever, without having to need that argument null exception method. So path of least resistance. So that's basically the feature. And it's, at first glance, it's kind of like, well, is it worth the controversy for what could be one line of code of argument null exception .throw versus these two things? The thing where it's interesting for me, there's a couple of neat things. So the first one is, if you like expression-bodied members, you can use these and still have your method be expression-bodied. Whereas obviously, if you're going to, even if you have a single line of code more, you have to create the full body. So that's useful to some. In a similar vein, I can go create a lambda and I can say validate that. No, I can't. I've got that wrong. What do we got? Actions. Yeah, that should work. Maybe I need brackets.
You might have to bracket it.
Various situations where you don't need brackets sometimes. It depends. I'm surprised that one did. But anyway, same thing, right? So here's my Lambda body, which I've been able to keep nice and simple, but obviously the method is what it is. This is probably a little bit more useful because Lambdas often are single line, and to make them multi-line, you now need a return statement if it was a function and all those things. The biggest thing, though, that I think that's interesting, and how am I going to do this one? All right, I'm going to go class. I'm going to create a constructor for it, which takes in a parameter. I'm going to create another class which inherits from that one. Oops. And create a constructor here. Type it back. See, let's take in string and we'll validate it, and then we'll take in something else and call our base constructor. And so what's interesting here is this is validating that parameter before calling the base constructor, which there is currently no way to express this in C#, without this feature, right? There's no way to get in before the base call. So that's interesting as well. If B did some long-winded network operation to download the world or something, which, whether you want to do that in the constructor is up to you. It's nicer to validate that early. Things like iterators, you can validate them early before you iterate anything. Async methods maybe. So it's nice to get like this is done up front. And then the other thing about the syntax is just that it could, and it's not yet, it could be something that's extended. So you could imagine this calling this method, and if it returns null, then throwing an exception, which currently you do with that sort of thing. And that's where the exclamation marks kind of make sense, right? If you had like required or something here, you can't do that here. That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, so if you put not null on the B constructor as an annotation on the parameter or the arg.
On here? Yeah.
No, not there. The actual not null square brackets annotation.
Oh, okay. So that's the sort of the next thing, I guess, to talk about. I have not used nullable reference types at all in anything I've shown you yet, and that's deliberate because this is a completely separate feature. And that's probably the number one bit of feedback is how come I can now do this, right? Why does this make sense? So apparently I can't. I think they made an error. Good on them. The sort of obvious question is, if in a world of nullable reference types, this string already means this can't be null, so why would I have to specify this? And the basic answer there is, well, you don't necessarily, like, nullable reference types is not a runtime thing, right? It's compile time. So the fact that I've said I can't pass in null here, if this is a library, or in fact, even if it's not, right? Like, it's trivial for me to pass a null into this parameter. The compiler will not, like, I can just go new C, I can pass in null, and with an exclamation mark, and it's fine. The compiler is happy. So null checking there, all you're going to do is either have the same effect, which is at runtime it's going to blow up and you're not going to know why. So it's a different concept, right? It's a different time. The other thing, though, is that I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, that's right. Sorry. People talk about automatically throwing for everything that's not nullable. The biggest thing there is you don't want to validate every parameter of every method call, because that's just needless work most of the time. You really probably, especially if you're using nullable reference types, you probably only put these on public methods. And so then you get into the argument of what's a public method. Is internal public? Depends on who's using it. And then you've got internals visible too, which makes all internals public and all those sorts of things. Things like explicit interface implementations are essentially always public, even though you're not saying they're public. So what does the compiler do in that case? So it just brought up a whole bunch of questions that there wasn't really good answers to. And the easiest thing to do, I guess, in that point was just essentially make it up to the developer. Maybe in future, all those answers will come and there'll be more work done, which is fine. But for now, this is sort of the best bet, is what they decided. And I've just seen there's heaps of questions. So
yeah, we might hit some of those questions, hey?
Yeah.
James, do you want to pick a random couple and throw them up?
All right, let's have Lord Teaspoon. Here we go. Why does throw if null call throw instead of just throwing? Isn't that just more garbage at the top of the stack?
Yeah, so the design of these throw helpers is for like extreme performance cases. So I suspect the fact that all throwing is done by one throw method, and I think you can actually call that directly as well. So I think you can just call throw and it will throw. I guess that's better than name. Doesn't exist. Did I spell it wrong again? Anyway, I don't know. I'm not sure whether. Let me try Visual Studio. It might actually. I'll just do this. It might not be public. I think at one stage it was planned to be public, but maybe throw if null. No, okay. Looks like it's not public. I think there was talk about making the throw method public as well, just for some, for other argument validation cases. But yeah, I suspect there's a benefit in having one method that does the throw, that is the thing the JIT has to worry about, and then every other method sort of in the stack there is probably going to be inlined, which actually we can probably check that, because if I make this release, I wonder if we'll see it. Might not, because it's only been called once and the JITs might not be that aggressive. And I've got to find the console again. No, okay. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I suspect it's just that. Like there's probably a nanosecond of perf benefit, and when you're inside the .NET runtime, every nanosecond you can provide is minutes to consumers.
All right. So we got a question from Scott. Does it support records?
Yeah, I mean, it should support everything.
The honesty at the start of that question, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm too lazy to Google through. I'm just going to actually, what am I doing? I'm going to type in Sharplab. I would be very surprised if it didn't, because it doesn't really make any sense. It would be more work for it not to support records, because ultimately that's just a constructor parameter. And I've broken my code and I've lost my mouse. No. There we go. So yeah, there should just be a constructor somewhere here. There it is. And yeah, sorry, null. So yeah, this is just a magical constructor. It's nothing special really. So it supports records, structs, anything, any parameter.
That's good. And we got one more from Lord Teaspoon, which is kind of
mid method, yeah.
Rather than
yeah, I mean that's it's a good comment. I mean that's why this is at the moment only for parameters, because it's the sort of, I guess, easy case. And maybe there'll be more, like, maybe they'll decide to allow it anywhere, but maybe they won't. I don't know that's well, it certainly hasn't been finalized. It might not have even been discussed yet. But generally the way the language design tries to go is, so this feature, null parameter checking, fine, what symbol do we want? They generally try to answer the question of, does this conflict with any possible future plans, which is really hard to do if you think about it. But essentially it's like, well, we might want to do this, therefore let's pick something that it doesn't rule it out. We may never do that, and we may find out that it doesn't work in that case, or there could be, no one can actually predict the future, but they try not to rule it out at least. So I know that's something they sort of think about. But yeah, it may not ever feel right. That might be too hidden. Maybe people will think that disappears into the code too much and it's not worth it. I remember when expression-bodied members came out and I hated them and swore I'd never use them. But here I am and I've changed my opinion. So you never know what's going to happen. And
there obviously was mentioned in the chat as well, the infamous var keyword.
Well, yes, that's...
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I don't know, maybe var was more vehement than this. The interesting thing...
It was.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with this is I am guilty of shit posting on Twitter about this, and I'm just like, there's a lot of people angry about something they're not forced to use and haven't ever seen really in production. But the reality is, like, yes, you can pick your preferences for your code, but you probably also read someone else's. And I remember at my old job when new versions of C# used to come out, we'd get all the devs in a room and we'd go through every single feature and we basically decide on the spot, do we think this should be banned in the coding conventions, or are we happy with, with allowing this? And that was interesting to do. And some things were like, no, we'd never want this. This is terrible. But I'm sure that all evolves over time. And, I mean, I work in Roslyn. There are a lot of the people there, obviously they're big fans of the language, so they tend to use every new feature. A great example is in Roslyn, you're allowed to have an if statement over 2 lines. And in my personal code, I would never do that. I like braces. It's just something that, you have to get used to seeing code you maybe don't like. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's good to have an opinion because you will have to see it. But at the same time, yeah, if it's var, if it's whatever, you can probably avoid most of it. Like this one's pretty easy to avoid. You're not going to randomly accidentally type it, I don't think. So do we want to talk about another C# 11 feature, or are there more?
We're talking about a Java feature instead.
Oh, Java. I happen to have one here. Look at this.
I thought it might be nice to talk about something interesting from the Java land, because new feature in 2018.
Yeah. Well, JDK 12, I'm pretty sure I've got eight installed, and I keep saying no to the updater. So I don't know if I've got this.
But there's this thing called a raw string literal that I thought it'd be good if, since you were here, we could talk about cloning that, because Java normally clones us. So wouldn't it be nice to do something the other way?
Well, it's not a clone, but we do have raw string literals. Raw string literals is one of these weird ones that I'm sure every member of the Roslyn team is super excited for, because we have heaps of tests that are like, you would go test code equals that, and then you create a class, and then you go method. And they're really annoying to type, which is why we all use C and M, because we don't type much. And then I've got to go like ry equals. Well, now I want this to be a string, so I need 2 quotes here, and I can do that. And obviously this is a simple example, but this gets really annoying to do. Things like you end up with, so this test code is in a namespace, which is in a class, which is in a method. So your var is indented, but your code is here. So as you're scrolling, it's all like wonky. But if you indent like this, well, now you have code that's got all this white space, which is weird. So raw string literals solve all of these problems, which is why we're all keen for it. Basically, let me just make this compile. Raw string literals, not 1, not 2, but 3 talking marks to denote a raw string literal.
Where's the steak knives?
Yeah, now I need to get rid of this. And then that needs to be on a line by its own. And then there we are. So this is a raw string literal. What this does, and hopefully you can see the vertical line there. This string does not have any of this empty space in it, right? The string removes all indentation up to the starting point of the end quotes. So if I back this out, this vertical line moves. So, whoops, and if I go too far, it's an error. So your code can look one way, but the values are separate. And then the other thing is these quotes are just sitting here in space, right? It doesn't affect it, because that's why there's 3 quotes. So a single quote is not, doesn't mean anything, right? Now the really hilarious thing about raw string literals is if you're the kind of person who goes crazy with things, you can. So I want to do this. I'm going to hide there, right? So this is a verbatim string. So how do we get a quote into a verbatim string? I use 2 quotes. Okay, fine. Now I want, I don't know how I'm going to do. Let's say I want another 2 quotes. Well, now I've broken my raw string, because 3 quotes was the delimiter. Here's 3 quotes. This doesn't work. So what I can do is I can add, that's a feature with a bug there. No, I want 1 there, and then I want, what did I got? 5. So I can add any number of quotes to the start and end, as long as they match. and then any number of quotes up to that number in the string don't mean anything, which means, strictly speaking, you can just go crazy with this. The editor gets a bit funny. I can just paste. This is totally valid C#, which is just hilarious. And I hope no one ever types this. But, you know, it all works. Actually, I should.
It's pretty nice, actually. It's like a markdown border around it.
It kind of is, yeah. It kind of,
like when you used to put lots of comments in C or whatever around your methods to say where the method starts and ends.
So you can see the indentation here is, you know, all of this white space is gone. So it's really nifty.
All right. So the question there is it tabs or spaces?
Well, so this is where it actually is a verbatim string, which is the one sort of probably gotcha if you're someone who moves between, say, Windows and Mac or Windows and Linux, is if your git checkout changes your line endings, then it'll change the value of the string. That's also true of verbatim strings, though, so it's not a new problem. But yeah, so this is just literally whatever you put in here, except for whatever's at the start, which is cool. The other thing it's really useful for, which is probably more relevant for more people, is JSON. So we can go, if I remember how JSON works, we can do this. All right, so JSON, I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. So again, JSON uses quotes. We don't have to worry about them. Interestingly, Visual Studio is smart now, and it's detected that this is JSON, so it's giving me syntax highlighting, which is
that's kind of cool.
It is cool. It's just a separate feature. Let me get rid of this nonsense. So JSON has quotes, which is cool. Of course, the other thing JSON has sometimes is values that you want to inject from somewhere. So for example, I can have favorite animal, a cow, and I want to inject, I want to inject this here using an interpolated string. But of course, if I do that, then now these braces would mean something. So how does that work? So in the tradition of just repeating tokens, so an interpolated raw string, as many $ as you, actually, why is that?
You need favorite animal there.
Thank you. I don't actually know how to code. As many $ as you have here is how many braces form the holes in the interpolated string. So again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't know that I can look at this anymore.
It kind of gets, yeah. Again, I hope no one actually does this, but it's just nice to know.
It looks like the material for like coding test interviews where you give people some code. They just look so weird. They think it doesn't.
The chat's getting stuck in. It's pretty good.
I can imagine. Look, I sincerely hope that there isn't anyone who sees this in a PR, but I also kind of also want to see, like, what is the example that needs this many $?
It's when you've got some JavaScript doing its own.
Yes, yeah, it's probably like
kind of thing going on or something.
Mustache templates in JSON. So that's interpolate strings, and I mean, like this one, if we look at in SharpLab, this one's pretty boring. Let me find the right branch. There we are. So it ends up it's just a string, right? Like it's as boring as you would imagine. This one, I guess, is string.concat because I've interpolated it. If I remove that, it's even simpler. It's probably, I don't know what it's complaining about now. Is it just smart enough to know that I did? Oh yeah, I'm in release mode, so it worked out. It worked out. I didn't use the string; it just got rid of it. So yeah, it's just a string. As you can see, like /r/n. If I was on Mac, that would say just /n. So it's sort of relatively simple in terms of what it does, but it's obviously super useful for some interesting cases.
So there's a couple of options. Backticks weren't an option.
So this one, I'm not so up on the history of all these. They definitely were considered. One thing with backticks I do know that's come up in the past in other features is there's a bunch of keyboards around the world where backticks are difficult to type. I mean, they're already shift something for us, so that's not too bad. But apparently there's other keyboard layouts internationally where backticks are a pain. That was definitely a factor. which is an interesting thing for, you know, us Aussies here on our island who never think about anyone else, to remember that C# has what, millions of people using it? I don't know, billions? I don't know how many. So yeah, all that stuff. And again, like, if anyone is interested, like if you go to C# Lang, well, you won't find a nice laid out discussion like
how
this.
is triple quotes meant to be used question?
Well, someone can go and post that thread and we'll see. But yeah, all these things are usually considered. It is interesting that Java uses backticks and .NET doesn't. It's, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I really hope that 7 double quotes didn't come out of a meeting without some serious thought around. So that's, I mean, yeah, it's a relatively simple question once you get over the weirdness. I don't know if there's any questions. I'm just looking through chat.
Well, how would this, is this useful for source generators at all?
It is, yeah. I mean, so this is useful for anything where you have a bunch of text that you want the compiler to leave alone, essentially. Which, let me see if I can. Oops. What do we got? Source generator or something. I have a random source generator here, and I think like even in this one. No, so this one I don't. But yeah, anyway. Awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. Oh, I've closed my Sharplab tab now. It definitely would be. It's very often like, yeah, when you're writing a source generator, I would like this block of C# code to be plonked in my generated output. If that has even a single quote, you now have a little bit of pain to manage. If that has interpolations, you have even more pain, because now you have to double all of your braces in order, like for a normal interpolated string, right? So a normal thing, you've got to double them to get braces in, which is fine. It's not that difficult, but you've now lost the ability to copy and paste that into Postman, right? If you're doing JSON or whatever it is. So having the raw string just makes it easy to work with. Does
the multi-dollar thing work on strings as well, or just on strings?
just on however you pronounce that last one. Yeah, so the multi-dollar thing is only for raw string literals. Essentially, the way to sort of think about it is all of the strings have something about them that you need to escape, right? So here I need to escape a new line, right? I can't just put one in. With verbatim strings, I can just put one in. I don't need to escape them. And so with the raw strings, you don't need to escape the quotes and the braces. Therefore, that's where you use the dollar signs. I don't actually know if that made any sense now that I've listened to it back in my head. But the answer was no. So any other language features anyone wants to ask about, or I can go down the list. There's not really any other controversial ones that I can think of. There's quite a few like almost like cleanup ones, if you ask me. So like new lines in interpolations, right? This one's really simple. So here's a interpolated string with a 1 in it, and I can put new lines in. That's all. Like it's really that simple. But if that's the sort of thing you want to do, then that's really useful, and you couldn't do it before. So there's a couple of sort of little cleanup things like that, right? Like relaxing ordering of ref and partial. I've never used ref in Anger in my life, but I don't know what order it goes in, so why should the compiler care? Things like name of you couldn't use on parameters, now you can, right? Little simple things like that, which is nice to have in there. The biggest one that the biggest next one to get used to, I guess, for everyone is probably list patterns. Pattern matching in general, like it can be weird if you haven't used it. Ooh, that's not what I want to do at all. Actually, I better make sure I'm in the right branch. So what this is so ints is basically 1, 2, 4. And so what this is basically saying, hey, here's my list of ints. I have 3 elements, the first one being a 1, the next a 2, then a 4. And the compiler does weird things when it tries to, well, not weird, but like, so it's checking the count because that's more efficient than checking each item. And then it's not looping, it's checking them directly, right? And then depending on what I do here, it'll change what it does. You can also do cool things like I can put in ... which basically says a 1 and a 2, and then any number of anything else, and then a 4. And so here we're going to check it's got to be more than 3. The first 2 we know, and then the last one. So, and you know, we can make this as complicated as we like, and see if the compiler devs are actually smart, which of course they are. Slice patterns, none of these want to direct inside this one.
You can only have one.
Oh, once. Whoops. Oh, I thought maybe that's still a proposal. I thought there was some. Anyway, apparently that's not in. That could also be coming because I don't like this. This feature is not finalized. It's actually this one's actually been contributed by a community member too, which is cool. And then I think you can do var x here as well, so I can grab out the second last element. If there's a 1 in the first slot and a 2 in the second, then any number and a 4 at the end, which is, I mean, I don't know the real world example of this, but obviously these things can get convoluted. You can essentially use any other pattern.
You just did a numeric regex.
It is very similar. So if you haven't watched the .NET community stand-up with Stephen Tao, where he talks about the regex source generator, there is a lot of those sort of vibes here of doing these and watching what the compiler does. The regex one is obviously amazing because regexes are just weird. But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, this is why I love SharpLab, just to look at what's going on. It's like, how did they think of that? So yeah, list patterns is one of those ones where I don't know how often it comes up, but I can imagine it being like super useful.
I can imagine if you're doing a lot of high performance maths.
Yeah, I mean, even like simple things like this, right? Like that can be just, you'd otherwise doing if the count is greater than 3, then pull out the first element and assign it to a variable, then pull out the second. Like it's just 4 or 5 lines of code. It's not difficult, but if you're in the mindset where you like patterns, then this is useful.
Well,
but
now make the last one an array of more ints. Multi-dimensional pattern matching. I don't know.
Like arrays?
Yeah, you got to change the type on your ints coming in.
Yeah, I don't know if that's.
Yeah, it's just getting confusing now.
Yeah, I mean that's, and obviously like ints is not very versatile. Like if I did strings, then well, no, strings aren't even that exciting. But yeah, you could obviously do it. I could pull this out as an object or whatever. Yeah, list of objects.
Integer list. Oh, object. Oh, that's just gotten sad. All that boxing.
Yeah, there's something in Ruby that's coming, and the devs were saying that it's for JSON parsing as well. Does this one have the option for pulling values out of JSON easily? No.
So this is all. I wouldn't imagine so because this is all got to be compile time. Like this is all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This isn't looking into. I mean, you can look into the this object, right? I can string, like I can look into it in terms of saying length is 3, and if this was a class, I could pull out the value property and I could check that the value is or something. But I'm not sure how useful that would be.
That code anymore.
So this is the thing with patterns, and I love patterns in general, but I use I don't know 50% of them because I forget about the other 50%, and then B, they get really messy really quickly. The one I hate is the deconstruct pattern, which it's nonsensical to me. I've never really been able to So let me see if I can work out how to do it here. So we go create a deconstruct method, deconstruct, and then we go an out string. I think that's how you do it. Honestly, I've never written one in anger. And so then I can go here and I can say, well, if this is a C, got it right first time. Look at that. So this is saying if this is a C and it deconstructs into 2 parameters that are both strings, and the first one is equal to David and the second one is equal to Wengier, which I mean you can see here. But seeing that in a pattern, I just look at, I'm like, hang on, what are you constructing a new, what is this?
Something put in there, and
exactly. It's really it's really odd. So then I can go x dot. Well, there's nothing I can see, but yeah, that one. So I always forget that deconstruct patterns exist because I'm always confused about them when I see them. So and patterns can definitely get just crazy. Yeah. So can we throw vars in there? Yes, we can. Yeah, readability, absolutely. Sometimes patterns are so expressive and they're super readable, and then sometimes it's just a nightmare. I like them when I can use them to essentially remove nesting. So, if I can build up if this is this and pull something out and then check that thing and then check that thing, they read down the page rather than getting constantly indented by a series of nested ifs. So I like that sort of thing. What else is new in C# 11? This one's good. If you haven't seen this one, this is a perf win, which let me get rid of all this rubbish. So this is again a relatively minor change, but something that it's not obvious. So we have a parameter here. It takes a string. No, that returns a string, doesn't it? I want an action that takes a string. It doesn't matter about the call it. All right, so what this is so I can call m and I can pass in a lambda. That's a lambda that takes a string. All right, and
you had the chance to use a raw string literal and you didn't do it.
Yep. So this is okay. So this is what a lambda expression gets decompiled, lowered to, and it's hard to read. But roughly, what happens is there is this static read-only or static action here on this class, which is the action, right? This is the lambda. And if it's not null, it gets used. And if it is null, then it creates a new action. And there we go. What this means is the lambda is cached. So the lambda will be created once. And no matter how many times this method is called or this lambda is called, it always just reuses the same action over and over again, this one. And so that's good for perf. This, actually, and this is probably going to complain because, oh no, good, found the right overload. So with what's new is that this same thing, and you can see this pattern here, right? Here's the action. This pattern now works for console.writeLine. If I change this back to, I'm going to hope this demonstrates it. Yeah. So what used to happen is every single time this method was called, it would construct a new action. So this is the simpler looking code, but it actually performs worse. This looks like you're creating a lambda, but it actually caches the lambda. So it was just this weird sort of trap that people fell into for performance reasons, that the sort of fixing of it was, I guess, relatively easy. I mean, working on the compiler is never easy if you ask me, but it was relatively easy. The barrier here was actually the C# spec said when you pass in a method group here, it will always create a new delegate. So they had to update the spec, otherwise the compiler would be in violation. So once the spec was updated, which is whatever process it is, then the compiler change came in. So that one's an interesting one because I have been on the receiving end of many PRs where I've created, passed in method groups, or whatever, and people say, oh, no, use a lambda, it's better performance. And then now all of those PRs we can redo them again because now they're the same performance, which is cool.
Here comes that 15,000 line PR. Beautiful.
Absolutely. Generic attributes are, I don't know, well, I'm going to leave this up on the screen for a second. Does anyone, there aren't any questions. Does anyone want to have any requests? Unfortunately, the rest of these, none of them have been implemented, so I can talk about them. But
just checking the comments. This is your chance. Type them in as we pause briefly.
Scott, I can see.
While we're doing that, is required property going into 11?
This is a very good question. So this was one that was scheduled for C# 10, and it didn't make it in time. It was cut at the last minute. I have heard Fred. This is Fred. Hello, Fred. I have heard Fred say that if he doesn't get it in this time, he's going to be in trouble. But never say always. I don't know. Maybe I very much hope so, because this one closes a big gap on like records and nullable reference types and all of those things and how usable they are. So I'll just quickly show what I mean. Let's go and create a record with. Okay, so if I create a record and I put a parameter here, that's a constructor. Fine. But if I do this, oh wait, it's a bad idea. String, and I want them to be non-nullable. So this is really common for me when deserializing JSON. I want small classes, right? So I define records. I don't want to have constructors. What I do is I go new R x equals hello and y equals hello, which is cool. If I will enable this, I should get 2 warnings, which I do, which basically is the compiler saying these properties are not nullable, but they're not initialized in the constructor. So that's a problem, right? They need to be
but if you set them as inits, wouldn't that fix?
No, so sorry. Yes, thank you. I should have done that. Yeah, it doesn't help. So what init says is you can only set it at initialization, but it doesn't say that you have to set it at initialization, right? A constructor parameter says I have to set it at initialization, and then now my code doesn't work. So a constructor parameter says I have to do it because I have to pass it in, but init just says I can only set it. So I can't do this, but it doesn't mean that I have to do that, right? It's this odd gap between nullable, init, and, well, not necessarily records, but obviously that's where init shows up the most. So what will happen is required, which I wonder if there's a branch. I haven't actually checked. Oh, maybe. 5th of February. Oh, interesting. I honestly have no idea if this is going to work, but we're going to live debug this. Let's go with public static class required member attributes. Best. Oh, I need the constructor.
Sure, it's not stick required. It has an attribute on. Oh no, it's.
Oh, there we go. It wasn't static. Oh, look at
that is cheating.
The compiler. Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't actually know what to expect here other than an attribute. So what this should do is it should mean if I comment this out, that's not important. I mean, as I say, this is still in development. What this will do in theory is this will now error here because I haven't specified X. Even though it's not a constructor parameter, so I don't have to in the normal sense, at initialization time, I have to set it. Now, that could be a constructor. It could be object initializer, right? It could be whatever mechanism required. Essentially, the intent is for it to cover all of the possible initialization scenarios, if that makes sense. So yeah, this I definitely am looking forward to because so I work on the Razor editor some of my time, and it's very heavily uses JSON, and all of our JSON models are records with init properties, and we are just not quite protected enough. You know, there is still possible for the way I usually get around this, just for completion, is to do this, to say, yes, trust me, I know what I'm doing, which is great until, of course, I accidentally do the wrong thing or don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, that just at least shuts the compiler up. Does it even? No, okay, it's good. It doesn't actually write the code out anyway. So yeah, so required properties I'm definitely looking forward to, and I'm hopeful they get in. Pattern matching on read-only span. My first regex. That's interesting. Pattern matching on read-only span is I guess similar to like list patterns and things, where it's just with spans and memory and whatever, they can represent something, right? Like a string, which is a read-only span of chars in this example. But there's just no way to actually the compiler won't let you pattern match on it, but there's no reason it can't. So if r.x is hello, this works because that's a string. If I make this a read-only span of char, if I spell or type correctly, and oh, interesting. Cannot be an auto-implemented property. I didn't know that.
Do you need to switch branch?
I don't think so. It's probably just rules. Anyway, the compiler won't let this happen, even though logically speaking, it can just output the code for it. It just doesn't know how. So this is just a matter of teaching it. If we find the pattern here, right, like this is just doing an equals. Well, you know, if there's an equals overload that takes a read-only span of char, then that'll work. Reflection-based deserializers deal with required. So that's the fun part of these things, is they don't care, and they probably won't care, and they probably shouldn't. In the same way, so like if I do string x, if I do this, right, and I make this a record with a constructor, my JSON deserializer, oh yeah, none of this works now. Oh, yeah, right. A JSON deserializer is not going to care about the constructor parameters either. It will just happily create an instance without calling a constructor and just plonk the values in. So you're sort of already in the Wild West whenever you use deserializers. I think the point of like required and that sort of thing, it's to give, again, it's a compiler feature, not a runtime feature. So it's to give the developer less chances to shoot themselves in the foot. It's not about guaranteeing your code is safe. A required property will presumably not guarantee that you'll never get a null reference exception. If for no other reason than, you know, I could return a field and then just set that field to null. Yeah, I mean, the ORMs from Lord Teaspoon there, that's kind of the same thing. I doubt they'll care because they will probably just use activator.create instance and they will push on past any memory that you want. Yes, same as nullable reference types, exactly. If you have JSON deserializing a null into something you said isn't null, you're going to know about it, but the compiler is not going to help you. So.
Yep. Awesome. Well, given the time, it might be just worth touching on just a couple of other things.
Whoa. Yeah, sure.
I know. We managed
to competition as well.
Quite well. Oh, and the competition.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it at the start. But anyway, go on.
Just a couple of interesting things coming out. So how do we access this now if we wanted to play with it?
So,
or whatever's been implemented and released?
Yeah, so this page is in the Roslyn repo, is a good one to look at every now and again. It's in main docs language features. And basically this is where you will see this. So 17.2 is currently the preview version of Visual Studio. 17.1's released. So if it says preview 1, 2, 3, whatever, you can ignore that. It's in 17.1. I was using like a build from this afternoon, but I don't think there's anything exciting in there since preview 1 was released of 17.2. So basically these top 5 you can go and play with, and these, well, here's one. There you go. Generic attributes was actually, it made it into the C# 10 timeframe, but it's behind you have to set your lang version to preview in order to get it, which is true of all of these. But yeah, if you use like the latest release of Visual Studio, if you do a parameter null check, Visual Studio will say, hey, you can't do that without using C# 11, and you press Control Dot, and it upgrades your project, and then away you go. So for what's been implemented, you can go and party on it now. And again, none of the ones that have been implemented here require any runtime features. And then obviously with required members, we saw sometimes it's easy to fake the runtime features, even if you don't know what they are. So you can pretty much just go and use them. I guess the only thing to be aware of is you just need to make sure, if you want to put this in production, just make sure your build server has the latest as greatest as well. or reference the compiler by NuGet or all those other things. But yeah, you might find with the bleeding edge features, especially if you're using preview builds of VS, it's easy to get code that runs on your machine and you check it in and then the build fails in the PR because it's not out yet.
Yeah, so the question from the Sappho, the VS preview numbers in line with .NET 7 preview.
They
Short
don't line
answer,
up.
no.
Yeah, they so preview 1 came out of .NET 7 came out I think a week after 7.2 preview 1.
Yeah.
But normally they do. I think this is a little bit of a odd situation. I don't know if they will line up from now on. This, sometimes the first version after a big bump is there's delays and things. They normally do generally line up though. And that's how you normally get, again, that's how you normally get the new compiler. So .NET 7 Preview 1 includes whatever the latest Roslyn compiler is for the C# 11 features. So if you don't have that on your build server, you need to do something about that. I think we're just in a weird anomaly. I don't know why they didn't come out at the same time. Maybe they were too busy celebrating 20 years.
Yeah, marketing timing.
Oh, that was a little bit. I was not expecting.
Yeah,
there you go. I thought that would scroll down here because I don't actually know what's new in .NET 7 Preview 1.
Oh, there's a fair bit.
Whoa, breaking changes. Yeah, I mean it's a big bump, and this one's not LTS, and so that maybe means
no,
they
but
can
it
be
is supported.
Preview
1's a go live release.
Yes.
18 months.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, well, I imagine Preview 1's pretty light on as far as these things go because obviously November's reasonably far away.
Yep. All right. We could probably keep talking, but do want to respect people's time, and James has prizes to give away.
That's right.
Dave, if we pause now and throw it over to James, I think that would be cool. And thanks for running through that, by the way. Really good.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the code demos were very impressive as well.
My favorite thing is to just muck around in SharpLab and talk about C# without having to actually put work in and produce PowerPoint slides. So this was perfect.
It's better that way. All right, so competition. So when would you use
away, by the way?
Sorry, Richard? Oh yeah,
we giving you
at the beginning. So this is for 2 JetBrains licenses. So one for each person though. So 2 questions. And you can get any of the JetBrains products, and you get a year of support and infinite period of no support afterwards. But you basically get the product for the 1-year subscription and then so forth. Okay, so question, first one, on your marks, get set. No, it's a long question. Okay, so when would you use more than 3 quotes on raw string literals to start and end them?
Is this serious answers only? Or?
If you want a serious license, yes.
Only in projects you hate is my answer. Yes, Gareth is on the right track.
We have Lord Teaspoon giving a reasonable answer here. There you go. I think Lord Teaspoon, if you don't have too many licenses, then yeah, send me a message. So I'll send you the license details. That's all right. Otherwise, we'd have to keep going until we got a real answer because we've got to give the licenses away. Oh no, we seem to have lost Richard. Hang on.
Oh.
All right, we'll keep on with the prize giving regardless, and hopefully he'll pop back in a second. Yeah, the storms just started at my place as well. You're probably safe there, Dave, but in Sydney, it's pretty messy at the moment.
Yes, I've seen.
All right, and the other question is, what will the required keyword do when it's implemented?
Yeah, when Fred finishes his...
Right now, I give you what? Compiler error.
Yeah, probably.
It just started raining. and storms are in the area, so I just got kicked off temporarily while Telstra decided how the network works or something. Anyway, I'm back. Hopefully you had fun without me.
It's all right. We're on the last question. So will it throw an exception, or will it be compile time for required?
It's compile time. I don't think anyone knows the answer. Well, maybe they can't express it succinctly.
I'm going to chuck up any last answer. Otherwise, I've got a backup question. Yeah, all right. I think Tim's got it.
Oh, Tim's got it. Okay. Must be a timing. That's fair. Congrats, Tim.
All right. So, Tim, send me a message on Meetup with your email address, and I'll send you through the license.
We get there. We're staring intently at the screen. Go chat messages.
Yeah, so many chat messages going there.
Francis, an umbrella is required, but that's actually not the answer to the question.
No, the questions are done. We're all good. We've given away 2 licenses, so we've got Tim and Lord Teaspoon as our winners for tonight. So, yes, next month we actually have had some volunteers to talk about DAPA, so you stand by for that next month. But if anyone else has any
microservice goodness. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Richard.
I was just saying microservice goodness. It's a good thing.
Yes.
Yes, we have last month's recording. I think I might have forgotten to actually put it on YouTube. Sorry about that. Or at least I got it there and it was private and I haven't hit public yet. So that's my fault.
It's been demonetized.
Yeah. In-person meetups. That's an interesting question. I don't know, maybe. I always have been looking forward to this, but whenever we even start thinking about it, there's usually like a huge outbreak of COVID. So maybe
it's very interesting to think about. If I can plug for 2 seconds, I'm on the agenda committee for NDC Melbourne, and we just planned the agenda and tickets are on sale and all those things. But it seems very weird to try to organize something for a large number of people to gather in a room. Hopefully by June, it doesn't feel so weird.
That's very true.
All the previous ones, Francis, just for you, all the previous videos are on the ANZ Coders channel. I will just quickly post that here. Not the dodgy website that I haven't updated in 7 years, but
still there.
Oh, look at that.
Go. Look at that.
Yeah.
If we scroll down far enough, in theory.
And then there's a whole bunch of other ones that were done.
Oh, wow.
Posted by others. So I opened up the channel and they were posting things in there as well, which was cool.
Nice.
All right. So, yes, if anyone has any topics they'd like to speak on, then let us know as well with a meetup message. We have Mark speaking, but after that spots available.
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy? Actually, where's Andrew? I haven't seen Andrew tonight.
No, I haven't seen him either. Andrew, we miss you. Or if you're here, comment.
Yeah.
All right. Is that a wrap?
I think so.
Actually, just one last thing while we're mucking around. That tweet with the AOT piece.
Oh, yeah, this one, yes.
Yeah.
Start it again.
And this is kind of nice. It's
boom.
So you're probably going, what did I just see there? I just opened WinForms thing or something.
Oh, actually, yes. Hang on. I've scrolled over the punchline.
There you go. ARM64 native ahead of time compilation, and look at the startup time. It is literally
instant, basically.
Blindingly quick, milliseconds to launch, which is so much nicer than obviously the usual startup time. It's kind of nice where things are going in that space. Probably something for another conversation where some of the runtime is and the GC changes and PGO and all those sort of things.
The fact that desktop apps get all of this effort that has been put into .NET Core over the years is I mean, desktop apps. I have a very soft spot for desktop apps because I've written many and I still like them. But there was a few years there where you're writing WinForms app targeting .NET Framework 4.8 and just wondering what was going to happen. So it's nice that it's not dead.
And it's cross-platform. Maui's coming and everything else, and
Yep,
it's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's a wrap. Is that a wrap?
All right, thank you, everyone. We will press the big red button. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks,
all.
everybody.